Hello and welcome to All Things Foster, a place for coffee, connection, and community. Guys, I'm super excited to have my friend Cadence here with us today. But before we get to Cadence and her story, our episode sponsor for today is brought to you by Falcon Ridge IT, which is owned by Ashley Terry. If you're running a business, you already know how frustrating technology can be when it doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. Well, that's where Falcon Ridge IT comes in. They specialize in managed IT services, network support, and business continuity, helping your systems run smoothly so you can focus on what matters most. Whether it's keeping your data secure, improving your network, or making sure your team stays connected with reliable phone and IT systems, Falcon Ridge IT is there to take the stress off your plate. And what I really appreciate about Ashley is his heart towards the local community and his support of organizations like ours. Ashley is actually a foster and adoptive parent, and so he's just super great guy. Brittany is my assistant, Ashley is her husband's. So anyways, so if your business needs dependable IT support, or if you're just tired of dealing with tech headaches, reach out to Falcon Ridge IT today. You can find them online at falconridgeit.com or give them a call at 806-410-0246. That's 806-410-0246. So we've got Cadence with us here in the studio. I'm really excited to talk to Cadence. Cadence is actually on my board and brings a really unique perspective to our conversations. And so, Cadence, thank you for being willing to come on the podcast today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. So give us a little bit of who you are, where you came from.
Okay, so Cadence. I'm from Canyon, Texas. I grew up there, and I now live in Lubbock. I go to Texas Tech University, and I lived in Amarillo for a little while. And so I found the board, and I've been volunteering for quite a while now. Since
like 3-4 years.
Yeah. And so, it's just been awesome.
Yeah. And so you have a foster care adoption story, right?
Yes, I do, yes. I was adopted when I was 2 with my biological brother, Jay, and I was turning 3. And so, it was a very fast process, but it's taken a long time for me to get everything together and work through everything.
You found us online, I think. You were looking for a school project, right, or something?
Yeah, so my first year at Amarillo College, I had a psychology class, and it's mandated to have 4 hours of community service anywhere. And so I was kind of looking through this list of places that I can go and work with and volunteer at. And so I wanted to really do something that was going to make a difference and have something to do with my career. I'm going for neuropsychology, and at the time I was thinking more child psychology. So I just looked online and found Panhandle Orphan Care Network, and I figured, you know what? That's really good. I think that I could be able to help here, and that'd be good.
Yeah. So take us back to your earliest memories around foster care. What stands out to you the most?
I think the thing that stood out to me the most was the fact that it was so fast-paced. It felt like, I went through several different positions. I was in my biological home, and then I was taken and put with an aunt, and I was there for about 6 months living with them, and then we all got separated. I had several siblings involved, and I was placed into another home for a short amount of time. I really couldn't tell you how long I was there. But it was just so fast. Everything just happened so quickly, and it's so overwhelming, and as a child, you really don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that stood out the most, was just how fast everything happened.
Yeah, we've been doing a board retreat this weekend, kind of talking through some things, and that story that Rory told, where this week, Rory's wife is a teacher, and these 2 kiddos are in her school, and then like something happens, and then they call the school at like 11 o'clock, and they say, nobody can pick them up from school today. Nobody from biological family can pick them up today, right? And how just terrifying and scary that is to, I mean, you don't know what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
All you know is that all of a sudden I can't see mom or dad or whoever, you know, and stuff like that. So what have you been told, or do you remember about the circumstances that caused the removal?
So there were several kids in the home, and I had two older sisters. They were going to school at that time, and they had not been to school in a couple weeks. And so it was a red flag for sure.
Sure.
And so the few times that my sisters had been seen in the school, they had bruises and, you know, visual signs of abuse. And so they called because the red flag was that they hadn't been at school for a little while. So they went to the house and found several kids in a horrible position and situation in a home with no adults. And so my biological mom had skipped town and left a whole bunch of kids in a home for a week by themselves. No
gosh.
food, no water, nothing. And so that's really what had been the red flag there, was the fact that the sisters hadn't been at school. Other than that, there probably wouldn't have been any indicator or help. That didn't happen.
Yes. So do you remember much about being with your auntie? I mean, you were pretty young at that point. Do you remember anything?
I really don't. I don't remember too much about that situation and being there. And when I say it's so fast paced, it was like I was there for 6 months, but memory of that was it's just gone.
Yeah.
And as someone who's been through so much trauma, there's certain things you can just remember and pinpoint, and others that you just block out of your mind completely.
Right.
And so I think that's what it was for me for a long time, not to mention the time that I was there with my aunt. Me and Jay were very close. And so during that time I was there, he wasn't there with me. And so it was just like complete isolation, not knowing anything, not knowing what was going on, and had this aunt who brought on all these kids who wanted to help but didn't really know what to do. And so just 6 months of a blur, you know. Yeah.
And so then did you go from your aunt to the family that ended up adopting you, or was that did you go to another home and then went to your?
So I ended up going to another home. It was a lady, and she had several other kids that she had already adopted. She had 5 or 6 kids at the time already. That situation, I'm not quite sure why I was removed from her home. I think it was more just the state wanted to keep, you know, as many siblings together as possible.
Sure. Yeah.
And Jay had already been being fostered by my adoptive parents now. And so it probably just ended up being that type of situation of let's try and keep siblings together.
Yeah.
But while being there, it was just so overwhelming, you know, and I had that feeling of, you know, like what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And so time at that age, time is just, I mean, you don't really notice what time it is, what day it is. It's just like constant, you know. So yeah, that's all I can remember of that situation and being there.
Yeah. Do you remember at all, like, not being with Jay and then being with Jay? I mean, can you remember a time when you weren't and then you were, or is it's just all a blur and just don't?
I couldn't tell you a time of when I didn't have him. I think I'm sure it was just so traumatizing being away from him.
Yeah.
Because we were so close and he was all that I had. But I think I don't really even couldn't tell you when he was there. He was just there and gone the next. You know, I couldn't even tell you when.
Wow. So you had talked about having a CASA, right? A court-appointed special advocate.
Yeah.
So what do you remember about? We've had CASA on here and have talked about the importance of what they do.
Yeah.
What do you remember about your CASA?
So we have, most foster kids have visits with the family members. I mean, unless otherwise it's been set. But we had some visits with our biological mom and our sisters because the state was still trying to figure out and if we could be placed all together. And so to figure that out, we had some visits with my older sister and sisters, and they decided to have those visits at CASA. So we went and they were monitoring it, and after them viewing these visits, which for me were traumatizing, I mean, I remember these small rooms that they would put us in to go and play. I remember being terrorized by them. I mean, our sisters, they knew that me and Jay were close. And so after so long of not being with each other, finally being reunited and taken to these playrooms and having to do these visits with them, and we were separated, they would separate us and like take us at opposite sides of the room and, just be mean and push and different signs like that. And so CASA was watching all of this.
Yeah.
And after a few minutes of this happening, they realized pretty quickly, these kids are not safe to be with these other siblings. And so it ended up being, honestly, a thing that really pushed the adoption forward and made it go a lot faster and quicker for us and help us not have to be in so much trauma any longer. So that visit alone was really what pushed everything along.
Yeah. CASA just has such an important role.
Yeah.
They are the only person in the courtroom that doesn't have skin in the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've got the biological parents are each trying to they want to get the kids back. CPS is trying to do this and that, and you got these attorneys and that attorneys and so on and so forth, and the court appointed special advocates' only job is to speak up for the needs of the child right there. And they don't have skin in the game. They're not trying to get the kids. They're not trying to they're not trying to push to say, well, they need here, they need there. Their whole job is just to speak for those kids. And so their role is just so stinking important.
It is, yeah.
And so I just am so thankful for them and what they do. But other than that, do you remember your specific CASA worker advocate, or do you just have this kind of, because you were still probably 3 or 4 at this point?
Yeah. I really don't. I don't remember too much. I do remember my caseworker at the time. Her name was Bridget. And my mom just praises her all the time and would tell us, when she would tell us about our adoption story, she would mention Bridget and, she's the one who had brought me to my parents' house. And so I do remember little things like riding in the car and how kind she was and made me feel like I was seen, and loved and wanted. And,
love that.
And as a child going through so much trauma and feeling like you don't have a place that's your own.
Right.
Those people, your CASA workers and your caseworkers, those are the people that you get to see a lot of when you're in foster. And so I think it's really important what they do and, the love that they show.
So as an adult now, I mean, you're in school. How do you make sense, or can you even make sense of those early times?
Yeah.
You said you're going to school to be in psychology. I mean, to learn about trauma and stuff like that. I mean, but how do you? I mean, what work have you done? Is there things that you've been able to do to work through those memories, or not really? I mean, it's just they're just not there.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of it has been my foundation and the way that I grew up. I was very fortunate to be raised in a family that had a foundation of God and church, and my mom had me in church every single time, the doors were open. And so that foundation really helped me through a lot of making sense of what had happened. No one can fully make sense of what you went through because there's no rhyme or reason to it, And so that for me was a big part of my processing what had happened. And even as a grown adult, I mean, I'm 23 and I'm still processing these things and learning so much about myself, even living on my own for the first time and finding myself and my identity and who I want to be and how I can help. And so making sense of what happened early on, therapy and prayer and, just time in my word and figuring out who I am, just time. Time has helped me make sense of it and kind of just heal from what had happened.
Sure. As mentioned before we hit record, I mean, I'm 45 and I'm still healing from my experiences. I mean, it's a long road. So,
Yeah.
so your parents were fostering through Bear, and they already had Jay, right?
Jack.
Jack.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they ended up coming to you. Ended up both with them after what had probably been 6 months or a year at this point.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not quite sure when Jay had gotten there. They had already had Jay for a little while, but they had gotten Jack first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had gotten Jack from the hospital. He was 5 days old
Okay.
when they got him. They had just been certified the night before Thanksgiving.
Wow.
Yeah. And so my mom, of course, hosting all this Thanksgiving, and
Yeah.
everything at her house. And they get the call, hey, we have a baby boy and at the hospital. You have to come get him. And my mom's like, what? Like, overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, okay, so I got to get everything going. And so, all the calls made, hey, Thanksgiving's not happening at my house this year. And so she had that dropped on her really quickly and went and got Jack, and he was 5 days old. And I'm not quite sure how old he was by the time they had gotten Jay. And then they had received me after, it had to have been a couple months by the time they had gotten me. So I think I was the last one to come into the family.
Sure. So how does hearing how did you, well, let me go this way first. Did you know the whole time that you were adopted? I mean, this wasn't something that, at 15 or 18, it's like, hey, you're adopted.
No. Yeah, no surprises there. Yeah. No, yeah. So my mom was very open about, we were old enough, and even the conversations that we had and the struggles we were going through. As a child going in and even saying something as simple as, my mom tells me all the time, and we will have these conversations, and it's really funny and to talk about now. But as a child, I was so overwhelmed with what had happened and trying to find my place. And I had been through so many homes where I had these mother figures, and so as a young child who's been through home and home, the thing my mom always said was I would get angry with her and I would tell her, well, I don't want my biological mom. I don't want that other mom. And I dang sure don't want you. And she would be like, hearing that from a child, and to that understanding and knowledge of, I have been through more than one place. This isn't normal.
Yeah.
Clearly something is off here. Something's different. And so I always had that understanding of, I am adopted, and I've been through this situation, and this type of situation isn't normal for other kids to go through, And so my mom was always very transparent with us. She told us as much as we needed to know.
Yeah, sure.
At a young age. And the older we got, the more curious we got, of course. And we had those hard conversations and, those what do you remember type stories and conversations. And so I always pretty well knew, because those are such big things to happen at such a young time in your life when you're developing.
Yeah. So your parents went from 2 kids to 5, like really quick. How have they talked with you about how hard that transition was with 2 to 5? Like there's more than double.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's where we've had a lot of conversations with that, me and my mom, about everything, and the grace that I've even learned to give my mom, given the fact that she went through so much so fast, and the lack of therapy and community and support that she had as, basically an only parent. My dad worked so much, and so my mom is with all these kids, and my dad's working to support all of us. And so it was very hard for her. She felt like she was thrown into the fire,
Yeah.
And so there was very little at the time. There was very little support that she was offered.
Yeah.
And so she, like I said, she had got the call like the next day, hey, you have a little baby boy, you're going to come pick him up. And she has nothing. And, my dad's working, and she's got 2 other kids that she's got to go drop off. And so it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And you have so many children with so many different personalities and triggers and trauma. And so it's a lot. It's a lot to process, to go from 2 to 5. And I'm sure she's had several of those moments of, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I'm way over my head in all of this, And so I can only imagine what that would feel like as a parent, to be so overwhelmed.
Yeah. How, what did your foster parents or adoptive parents do that helped you feel safe.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that kind of stood out as what they were doing that was like, okay, that makes me feel safe? What do you think?
So when I first was placed into this home, I was so excited to see Jay, of course, after so long of not being with him. But then, that honeymoon phase is gone, and you are left with, okay, what's going to happen next?
Sure.
And so after all that adrenaline and excitement wears off, and so I remember I had one night where I was having a really rough time and adjusting to the home and everything. And so me and my mom had gotten into it. I'm 3 years old and terrible twos, around that age. And so I was very upset that night. And I remember just telling her, I don't want to be here. I don't want you, And there was that moment of complete grace and brokenness that my mom had in that moment for me. And I think that's really what made the breakthrough of, okay, I don't want to just foster, but I want to adopt, was this moment of feeling like, okay, this little girl has been through so much, and she's sitting here saying she doesn't want me, but it's really coming from a broken place of, I don't know what a mom is.
Yeah.
And so, and not feeling safe. And so after we had our little scuffle and I was so just upset, I remember my mom sitting me down and telling me, look, I'm not going to leave you. Yeah. I'm not going to walk out of your life. Yeah. You are worth it, and I do love you, and I will never not love you and never not want to be here for you, and it's going to be okay. No matter what happens, you will be okay, and I will be here for you. And I think hearing that for the first time, and that to really feel that, and her holding me and hugging me, it was like, okay, I'm safe. I am okay. This is going to be good. I'm not going to have to be in survival mode anymore. It was that moment of, I can breathe. Yeah. And to be in survival mode at such a young age and learning to put up walls and be, defensive. And my immediate thing was to get angry, going through everything that I did. So that moment of hearing, it's going to be okay. I love you and I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to walk out of your life. That's what I needed to hear in that moment, to know I feel safe. That reassurance. Yeah. I think reassurance and transparency is goal to, having that relationship and making your foster child feel heard and seen. Sure.
Yeah. Jeez. You told me that you made it to their home with the diaper you had on and one shirt, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When did you hear that, or when did you find that out? Do you remember when your mom tells you that, or?
Yeah, so I have very pretty good memory of the day that I arrived at my family's home. I was sitting in the back seat. My mom would tell me all the time these stories of me never sitting in my car seat, and I would get out and and she's like, stay in that car seat, and I just wouldn't. And so I remember riding in the car. Bridget, my caseworker, she had taken me to the house, and she had this tan car, and I am 2-3 years old sitting in the back seat, and I'm strapped in, but there was no car seat. So I'm strapped in the back seat of this car. I'm 3 years old, strapped in this big old seat. And so I'm strapped up, but I'm laying flat across the back seat, coloring with these colors. And I remember she's like, okay, we're here. And then I'm just like sitting up, looking around like, what do you mean we're here? Confused. I remember walking up the long walkway to the door, and they open the door and there's Jay. Yeah. And it's just that moment of like, oh my gosh, there you are, that excitement. And so I just remember running in and seeing him, and I didn't have anything with me. I didn't have I had my coloring book and my crayons from the caseworker. Yeah. But as far as, I didn't have a bag. They didn't leave me with any notes or instructions or anything, so. But I think the first time I remember seeing my room and everything, it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is mine, Wow. And so, yeah.
How do you think that experience shapes the way you view foster care today?
Honestly, I think that since I've lived it, I feel so much pull and emotion, for foster families and foster children, and that relation, And so the way that I view everything now is so different. I mean, unless you've lived it or you've really experienced fostering and seen the emotions and the ups and downs with these children, you never really can fully understand anything unless you've been through it.
Right.
And so it's definitely shaped my idea differently for the way I view foster care and everything because I've lived it.
Yeah, for sure. So you saw that we did placement packages when you found us, right?
Yes.
And so what is that in your mind? Like, I wish I had that. Is that what it was?
Yeah, that was exactly. I just remember wow, I asked my mom, I was like, hey, what support were you given? And she's like, none.
Yeah.
None.
Right.
We were told, oh, well, Goodwill's got some good stuff, And so she's like, we had nothing. Like,
right.
She's like, we were opening credit cards to try and, your last minute giving these kids and opening your home and you don't have anything and that money doesn't come into effect until a month and,
right.
Of having these kids. And so, but it's an immediate need.
Right.
And when you have that need and that urgency and you don't know what to do, you make it happen. And my mom, that's exactly what she did. She made something happen. And so, knowing about the placement packages and knowing what y'all do and what POCN does, it's a game changer completely.
Yeah.
And I just, that push of, I never want a child to know what it's like to have absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And to be given something so amazing, ownership, that's what it is. It's not just stuff. It's not just clothes. It's not just, oh, thank you for the stuff. That is all that child has.
Right.
That is their property, just like we take pride and joy in, oh my gosh, that's my first car. That's mine. I did that. I have that. That's how a child feels with their stuff, their clothes and, all of the stuff that you give them. It's ownership, It's not just a shirt. It's not just stuff. It's so meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And just like it was for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can like you said for you walk into your room and you're like, oh my gosh, this is my room.
Yeah.
How do you think your experiences shape and influence who you are today?
Yeah, so I think that I have so much empathy and understanding for just people in general. I've always had this feeling of just understanding because I remember being that child that felt like no one understood me.
Yeah.
And the whole reason why I'm even going for psychology and family counseling and anything like this is because when I was 2 and 3 years old, and whenever I was old enough to get into school, I was getting into a lot of trouble. I had a lot of behavioral issues. And so I just remember feeling like no one understands me. I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard. And that's why I was lashing out and having these behavioral issues and trying to get any and everyone to see me, even if it was negative attention, attention is attention. And so I had this school counselor and she sat me down and she's like, why do you feel the way that you feel? And, talked to me like I was actually there. Like it wasn't just some kid being bad, and for the first time I was like, wow, she gets me. She sees me. And so from that point on, I spent a lot of time with that school counselor.
Sure.
And so I always had this idea of if I can help a child go through what they went through and help them be seen and understood, then I will live the rest of my life trying to do that. And so my whole situation and what I went through really did shape who I am today because I never would have met that counselor. I never would have had that empathy and that sympathy for other kids and other people, and even family members and people even having trouble with their kids that aren't even in foster care, just that understanding of grace,
Sure. I love that. It's so common in the individuals that I work with on a daily basis and a consistent basis. So many of them have these foster care experiences and they're like, this person made such an impact that I'm doing it because of that, or I didn't have that and I wanted that.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to try to provide that for somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does kind of shape and mold, who we are and what we do. And it can be in a negative way too. But I mean, I know a lot of foster families who one of them was in foster care. And so that's why they decided to do that. Or they grew up with a friend who was in foster care and stayed in the same school, but went from this house to this house to this house, and that kind of experience and stuff. So what do you think healing has looked like for you, in the last few years?
I would definitely say that
not that it's done, because it ain't done.
It's never done completely. Yeah, there's always work that can be done. For me, counseling, and even through, I've had a lot of healing and understanding and like aha moments, even through going through school and being in these psychology classes and these classes about, child development and behavior and things like that. And I've learned so much about myself, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't just feeling that way because I was just feeling that way. Like there's a name and there's a reason why I felt that way.
Right.
And just going through these courses and meeting people and even being on the board and hearing these stories from these other foster families, it really is healing. Just everything, every day, every class, every story is just healing a little bit every single day. And so healing for me has looked very different.
Yeah.
In all walks and stages of my life. I mean, whether it's spending years just trying to be on my own and figure out who I am and be okay with who I am and be okay with my identity and what I went through, and kind of give myself grace of, you weren't perfect and you're not perfect, but, at least you are, trying to be a good citizen and you're going to school and I'm doing these things. And it's so easy to be harsh on myself and have those moments of, whether it's even just relationships with friends, losing a friend or losing a boyfriend or, whatever the situation is, it's so easy to sit there and feel that rejection and that loss and tie it back to that feeling of when you were taken and when you were rejected from your biological family or whatever the situation is. And it's so easy to throw, yourself back in those positions of, oh my gosh, once again, I'm alone. Yeah. And so healing for me has had to come through several different things and outlets, and even just like communicating with my mom and my family about these things and talking to God and having a close relationship and good prayer life, and having these support systems around me has really helped my healing process.
Yeah. So if you were going to talk to a foster parent, what would you want them to hear from you with your experiences in foster care?
Probably the different stages that I went through in my life, because it's so hard. Everyone dreads the teenage years. How is that going to look like? What is that rebellion that's to come? And so, and every kid is different.
Sure.
Some have really rough rebellion years and some don't. But I think I would just explain to them the way I felt through each of those critical parts in my life and what it felt like for me to have my own place where I belonged, what belonging looks like from my point of view, from a child going into a family that already had established kids, and definitely the emotions and the feelings that I would feel, and probably what their children are feeling as well, that feeling of, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? Through my teenage years, I did struggle with that a lot, of who am I? What can I do to make sure that I'm liked? The people pleasing. And, that was a big thing of, oh my goodness, I don't want to go through this point in my life where nobody likes me. What if they don't like me? And so I think I would just share with foster families, foster parents, those emotions and how it feels going into those new situations and what's to come, a little bit of some knowledge on how to speak to a child that's been through trauma and what it looks like for us and the grace that has to be given.
Absolutely. So when you found us and you're like, oh, they do placement packages, this is really cool. What was it like in the beginning, just volunteering with us? What was that feeling like?
Honestly, for me, it felt great.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I loved the vision. Immediately when I was hearing about placement packages and knowing more in depth what it is, and my first time seeing the Moses closet and everything like that, it was just so overwhelming. It's just that excitement, that burst of, oh my goodness, we are doing something so extraordinary here, and to feel that connection of, oh my gosh, like I can definitely, like, this is within my wheelhouse, like I can definitely help in this position because of what I've experienced, and I know what it's like to have nothing, and to take a placement package and see the pure joy and be thrown back to that feeling of, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
You know, just remembering how I felt the first time I ever was given property, you know, something that was mine. And so when I first heard about it and I first started volunteering, it was just so excited.
Yeah.
I was filled with joy. I just was like, what can we do next?
Right.
And so it was really great.
I love that. So what was it that made you decide? Because I think I asked you, I was like, hey, think about serving on the board. What made you say yes?
I think it was the idea and the understanding of, I can make a difference.
Yeah.
Not only can I make a difference in just volunteering, but I can really make a difference. I mean, in policy and community and different things like that. You know, I can reach out even more. I can help even more. You know, we can go further with this. It's not just a, you know, you show up and you sell a couple raffle tickets and you do here and you help there, you know, but I could actually make a difference. The idea of that really just like was so exciting. I was like, I gotta do this.
I love that. I love that. What did it feel like being part of making sure that kiddos have their own things and their own property? How does that feel? I mean, you talked about seeing the joy, but I mean, what does it feel like to be an integral part in making that happen?
Yeah, I think that everyone should be a part of this process of being able to deliver these packages, these love packages, you know, because that's what it is. My first time delivering a package, I went to the Moses closet and I got to pick out, you know, the type of clothes that they have and their blankets and different toys that I like, you know, and so to see them open these gifts and be like, oh my gosh, I love this. Every little kid, this is all what I've always wanted. This is what I always wanted, you know, and that just excitement and appreciation, you know, and it lights a fire in you. It's just like that feel good feeling of, wow, like we are making a difference.
Right.
Like it just makes you want to go and deliver 20 million packages. I'm like, what? Let's do more. What's next, you know?
Absolutely.
And it's just so exciting. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, you know, every once in a while, I don't get to deliver. I used to deliver almost all of them, and now there's so much other stuff to do. So every once in a while, my business coach Rory will say, you know, hey, you need to spend some time on the grill.
Yeah.
And what he means is, you know, he was a manager at Whataburger, a manager of managers, and you know, he would tell the managers, every once in a while, you need to go make hamburgers because we're here to make hamburgers. That's what we're here for, you know? Mm-hmm. And I did not start this organization to write grants or do reports or this or that or whatever. I wanted to experience that joy of bringing some stuff to some kiddos, you know? Yeah. And so every once in a while, I just have to say, hey, Jennifer, I'm gonna take this one because, you know, yes, we're bringing stuff, but we're saying so much more with that stuff.
Yeah, it's so intentional.
Yeah.
And so thought about, you know, when you think about picking out every specific clothing and toy and, you know, there's even like, you know, letters and things that we put in there and these books. There's so much love and thoughtfulness that goes into it, you know, very, very intentional.
So what would you say to somebody if they're like, well, it's just some clothes and a suitcase? What do you say to them on that?
It's definitely not that to that child until you really do see that. I mean, regardless, you'll make it happen. I mean, you have to. My mom and dad made it happen. Yeah. When they didn't have a resource like PCN, and so you make it happen. But for that child, you really, I mean, it's like, oh, cool, yeah, you got a new blanket. Good job. That's awesome. I'm so happy for you. But it's like, it's just a blanket. But for that child, it's so much more.
Sure.
When you show up and you have nothing. So, just as simple as, you get to go to your bed every night and, you have your room. A lot of kids don't have that.
Oh, yeah.
They never have anything to call really theirs. And even when they're home, they're not home. It's not home,
Yeah.
And those things, that stuff is what makes that child feel home and feel like they have a place and feel belonged,
Yeah.
feel like they have a belonging. And so that's what it is. It's so much more than just stuff.
Yeah.
That is that child's home.
Yeah. I love it. I love the way you said that. It makes it home for them. That's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. What would you, I think we talked about this, but from the perspective of a kiddo that's coming into their home, what do you want that foster parent to know and to think about as that child's walking in the door?
That it's not going to be easy. It's going to come with trials and tribulations, but grace.
Yeah.
Grace and patience and transparency and openness and those conversations, and honestly what children want to hear, being pushed left and right and not knowing where they're going to go, is we may not know what's going to happen next, but right now, right in this moment, you are loved and you are seen and you are protected. And I think that should be the first thing that a foster family should do for a child, because you really don't know where they're going to be, the next moment. But the time that you get to have with them, you want to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Why else would you go into the foster, community, is to make these children feel wanted and loved, the little bit that you do have them, or even adoption, when you do decide to adopt and have them forever, that's what that child wants to hear and see is, wow, I am safe. I can breathe, even if it's for a night. A night sleeping in a bed, I'm safe.
Yeah. What advice do you give to someone who to adults that were adopted? What are some advice that you give them or would give them?
I think it would be to go to therapy.
Yeah.
Go to therapy.
Yeah.
Whether you really think you need it or not, you'll hit a point in your life. Even if it's something as simple as you've done great, everything's been fantastic, and then you turn 18, you turn 20, whatever, and you're on your own. And all of a sudden I'm alone.
Yeah.
And not having mom and dad or siblings or whoever, you're on your own. And I think some advice I would have is definitely go to therapy. Have a good support system.
Yeah.
Find people to be around. When you feel the worst thing you can possibly do when you feel alone is to isolate.
Right.
When you're depressed, the worst thing you can do is isolate yourself because it just spirals from there. So I think support system. Get a good support system because you will need it.
Yeah.
You will need it.
Yeah. You moved to Lubbock. That had to have been like scary.
Oh yeah.
And hard, especially when we as kiddos we didn't feel safe and valuable and loved and connected and all the things, and so being alone and not having that sense of community around your family and stuff like that, it's gotta be tough.
Yeah, it's definitely been difficult. Like I said, I'm 23. I'm still learning a lot about myself and still healing and figuring out that process. And a lot of the time, children that are in the foster system, they have this constant feeling of, at least I did, from my experience, this feeling of, I don't like change. Because, when you're so young and you go through so much change, unwanted change a lot of the time, you have no jurisdiction over where you go. You're just moved from place to place. And so that idea of not wanting change, and then when change does happen, it's like your whole world gets flipped. And it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And that fear of, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I had that feeling at first, moving away from my family and everything. But because I have such a good support system, and I get to come home on the weekends. You know, luckily Lubbock's not too far. But I even in Lubbock, I've found a support system of people and found a church and found people that are a lot like. I mean, they have programs even at Texas Tech where, you know, there's other kids that were in the foster system.
Really? I love that.
Yeah, and so like you just plugging yourself in and finding a place because, like I said, you're gonna need it.
Yeah. But
change a lot of the time, you know, kids that have gone through so much change and so much thrown back and forth as a child, they don't like change. They're a creature of habit.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, change is scary and it is frightening. You know, and that's where independence and learning to be independent, another thing that a foster parent can do for a child that's been adopted or in the foster system, is independence. Learning how to be independent, knowing, yes, you're independent, but you always have support. You always have help. You have
a safe place to land.
Yeah.
So if you can go back and talk to the 2-year-old Cadence, what would you tell her?
As corny as it sounds, I would probably tell her that it's going to be okay. Like, you know, because in that moment of not knowing what's coming next, or can I actually trust this woman that's saying she's going to be my mom? You know, can I actually let my guard down for once? I just needed to hear that it is going to be okay. And you are wanted and you are more than enough, you know, and that's what I would tell her. You are more than enough.
Yeah. It's beautiful. What does home mean?
So I think home is, it looks different to everyone, but for me, home is love, safety, support. You know, anywhere that you feel love and safety and support. Home is so different now than what I saw it back then, you know, when I was younger. I mean, since I've been on my own and moved out and I'm an adult now, going back to home and the house that I was raised in, you know, it's just so different now. And, but it always just has that sense and that feeling and those memories of like, this is home, this is mine, you know?
Yeah.
And so anything that feels like this is mine, peace, peace. Home is peace.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, it's great. I love it. So, why do you think POCN's mission matters?
Because I've seen the difference it can make. I've seen what it looks like to not have that and what it looks like to have that.
Yeah.
You know, to see the difference that it makes in everyone's lives, not even just the children, but in that when you have that sense of urgency of what am I going to do?
Yeah.
You know, I need this stuff for these children. You know, I can't have nothing, you know. Being able to have an organization like POCN makes the world of a difference in wanting, even the decision to want to foster, you know, and having that hope and knowing I want to do this and I want to be a help to these children that are in these homes and these systems that are so full of children that are needing somewhere to go and to just feel loved, even like I said, even for a night, even for a day, even for a week, you know, to know that it's okay.
Yeah.
I know that we don't know where you're going to next, but it's for right now, tonight, right this second, you are okay. And what POCN does is not only tell the kids, hey, you're okay, everything's going to be okay, like we got you, but it also tells the parents, hey, we got you, we are here, you know, the community is taken care of.
Love that. I love that. Well, guys, if you don't know what we're talking about when we talk about placement packages, we step in when a family gets a kiddo in their home. In the 26 counties of the Texas Panhandle, we provide this thing called a placement package. And every kiddo gets a suitcase, a Bible, a teddy bear, a book, a toy, and a blanket. But then over and above that, every kiddo gets those 6 things. But then over and above that, it's diapers and clothes and car seats and bottles and formula and all the things that a family needs. You know, each placement package per child that comes to that home costs the organization about $430. And so they get a lot of stuff. And so, you know, you've heard from Cadence what it was like not having a placement package and then being able to turn around and be able to provide one of those placement packages to a kiddo that's coming to that home. And so, so we need your help to get there. You know, we all of this stuff that we give to these families is new. We feel like that communicates love and value and respect. And so we need these items. So we do Moses Closet drives. We have an Amazon wish list where you can set up and be a monthly donor. Placement package partner is what we call them. $100 buys us all the clothes we need for a placement package, and $50 buys us a case of diapers, and $10 buys us an outfit. And so we would ask you to consider going to our website, panhandleorphan.org/donation, set that monthly placement package partner donation up. And, it's great. It's easy. It comes out of your account once a month. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. It just comes out. And so, last year we doubled what we provided in the year before. And our goal this year is to not quite double that. And then, within 5 years, every child coming into care in the 26 counties of the Panhandle gets a placement package. That's the end goal. And so, but we need your help to get there. So if you'll think about that, go to our website, panhandleorphan.org/donation, and consider setting that up. Cadence, thank you. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And this is not easy stuff to talk about. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed being here and discussing, and hopefully anything I've said has been helpful.
I think it is. I think it is. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for your service to the organization on the board and volunteering, all kinds of things. And so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys. Tune in next week. We've got another great episode coming your way. We'll see you on the flip side. Thanks.